Well, welcome to Beyond Belief. This is a smartphone. It is on the 4G network, but assuming in the next few months to a year, it'll jump to the 5G network. But what does that mean? So we've got researcher Ben Stewart with us to talk about 5G, how it plays into our current reality, and how it affects our human potential. Ben, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me back.
What's the difference between 4G and 5G?
Well, the whole thing with the numbers and the G is basically the generation of telecommunications. So 1G all the way up to 3G. 3G was where smartphones started. 4G was the next evolution of it. 5G is really, a lot of people are saying it's a faster phone, it's faster internet, but it's a deeper infrastructure embedded into our world. So it's not just about the phone anymore, and the phone may not actually even be as relevant in the 5G world.
Can this phone function in the 5G world, or does the owner of this phone need to get a new one?
Well, these are probably going to be retrofitted. So there will be new phones and people will probably start getting rid of these ones. These will still work in the 5G world.
Okay.
But in the 5G world, the new phones are also going to, in a sense, outsource a lot of what they do on the phone to the city that you live in. And the 5G world that we're talking about, it's not just the internet company, it's not just the cell towers. What it is it's an infrastructure that leads us deeper into a surveillance state.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. How so? How would that work?
Well, currently, as we speak, there are satellites going up, 5G satellites. So whereas before you needed to be somewhere on planet Earth near a cell tower to get service, soon we're going to have 5G pumping all over the world. You could be in the middle of the ocean eventually and still be able to get your 5G service. And so what most people are thinking about is, well, you'll be able to download a movie far quicker. What used to take maybe 30, 40 minutes, you could download in a couple seconds. And so that's incredible for people.
That is incredible.
Well, we need, let's say, self-driving cars. It needs high-speed internet. It can't have lag time, otherwise it may miss its turn.
Right.
So this is the explanation as to why we need to move into a 5G world. But what it really is, most people aren't getting the full story of what the infrastructure of 5G has to do to support such high-speed internet.
Ben, why do they have us shut our phones off on a plane?
Well, mainly because of the interference. Supposedly, the planes have their own frequencies going, and if everyone has their phone on and there's data from the cell towers going to all these phones on the plane, then it interrupts a lot of the technology on the planes.
Okay, so it's a safety thing.
Right, and I think in the way of the future, that's also not going to matter, because I think where we are getting our signal from is going to start, it's not going to be certain nodes. Like, yes, there will be the satellites, there will be the towers, but it's going to be ever present in the world. Right now, we are swimming in EMFs. We're swimming in about
bombarding us everywhere.
At least 100 million times more EMFs than our grandparents dealt with. But we don't see it, smell it, taste it, hear it. And some people say they can hear it, but it's called microwave hearing, and it's because it's actually affecting neurology.
I think so too. It could be potentially dangerous. If you have a 5G phone, and most people put their phones by their bed when they sleep, I know what I do is I keep it plugged in, so I'm at 100% power when I wake up. Is that dangerous if it's within 3 feet of you?
Well, yes, the closer the proximity to any device. Dangerous, it's really like in the immediate, it's not going to be dangerous. I touch technology all the time. I'm a filmmaker. And I notice very little health effects from it, but that's also because I try and keep my health up. For the most part, the people who are immune compromised might have problems with holding technology all the time, especially if you're holding it up to your head. I would say we need to start mitigating the problems. So if you're going to be talking on the phone, put it on speaker and set it down. And we have the ability to do that. But when we say that 5G is dangerous, it can be dangerous. But if we were to wake up into a smarter way of using the system that we are, there's no outrunning 5G. We're entering this world no matter what. It's already happening in China right now.
In a big way. As a matter of fact, Wuhan, China, where they had problems, it's fully 5G compatible, isn't it?
Fully blanketed city. It's the first fully blanketed 5G city. And what that means is, so that phone that you have, that's the platform. And in the 4G world, you can opt out by, let's say, getting rid of your phone, running off into the mountains and hiding, right?
That's right.
In a 5G world, you can't opt out. So the phone is less needed because if you're in a city like Wuhan, China, you step out your door and you say Uber. You don't need to say it into your phone. A self-driving car might come
Wait a
up.
minute. You just say Uber into the ether? And
There's
Uber
cameras
shows up?
everywhere. So right now there's 1 billion cameras in China. By 2022, there'll be 2 cameras for every 1 citizen. So the system, like whereas right now your phone is always picking up what you're saying.
Right.
The metadata is going to data companies, and that's deciding what media to send you to swing elections.
But you can't get a response back, can you, without the phone?
No, without the phone you can't, but potentially, I mean, if a camera is close enough to hear you, then there could be a speaker system or Siri embedded into Wuhan, China. So let's say you say Uber, a car comes up, it sees who you are, the car does, it knows your digital identity, it docks your pay from that.
Unbelievable.
You say, I want to get a bucket of chicken at the local store. It brings you there. The store sees you coming. Their algorithm detects your face. Even if you have a mask on, it can detect who you are based on your height, the way you walk, several different parameters. It knows what you ordered. It hands it to you. You grab it. The Uber takes you back home. That's the 5G world. Not only can you not opt out, but there's a brigadier general who's talking about this. He retired because of where this surveillance state is heading. He's saying you don't know where the data is going, who's using it, or for what
Or
purposes.
who's getting it.
Right.
Exactly. How does 5G exactly work technically from 4G? What have they done?
Well, so now instead of having towers every several miles, these tall towers, now
For 4G.
for 4G, where they're really, really big, tall masts, now you're going to have things the size of a shoebox every couple hundred feet on top of or on the side of every building. So you go to
Buildings,
Sydney.
trees, wherever, right?
Yeah, anywhere. So you go to Sydney, you'll see every other light pole has 5G masts on it.
Why?
And,
Why so many?
well, because several things. The way 5G works is a millimeter wave. So it works on a different frequency. And there's actually, you need to have it more spread out. And for such fast internet speeds, what we're going to need is these things need to be in closer proximity to our technology. So that's the platform, that's the infrastructure. And really what it is, what we're talking about is, it's like building a terrarium. It's building an environment for a certain kind of creature, but it's no longer just human creatures we're talking about. I think in the future, we're going to have drones the size of mosquitoes or gnats.
They already have little ones like that.
Right, and you won't be able to tell what they are, but high fidelity video, high fidelity audio, and everything you say can be picked up by these things that you think is a bug listening in on your conversation. The data gets transcribed, and that goes into a central database. But the interesting thing is,
Scary times, Ben.
I'm talking about a surveillance state where back in the Orwellian days, you would always see this human behind the visor or the TV saying like, what are these people doing? It's very little human activity surveilling the world now. What it is AI computers, supercomputers, quantum computers.
Right.
So it's every little thing. Like you can have a little mosquito that thinks like a quantum computer, which what that means is it predicts future probable outcomes. So these little things that are flying around us, gathering all our data, are smarter than, I would say, a lot of people because they are using supercomputing technology and it's going through this 5G grid to this tiny little drone.
Ben, here's Bloomberg News on the race for 5G.
So what are the trends of the future?
Well, we're going to be talking a lot about the connected life and the next generation of networks called 5G. And this is, as Tim Cook was just saying, this is going to transform the way we work, the way we live, and the way we play for the next generation, even more than we have in the last 10.
So it's 100 times faster than speeds we have now, right? What does that mean? What's possible?
There's no lag time. And so if a car is going 60 miles an hour down the highway in a 4G network, it would stop in 4.6 feet. Under a 5G scenario, that same 60 mile an hour car would stop in an inch. So it really does let you do autonomous cars and remote surgeries, all kinds of things with these new networks.
All right, Ben, she makes 5G sound like it's a panacea. What are we missing here?
Well, I think she did a pretty good job, but I don't think most of the population really knows how to conceptualize what's being built here. So what she's leaving out is, she said 100,000 times faster internet. But what that means is we're also producing data. The internet is 30 years old, and the amount of data we've produced is incredible. So where does all that data go? Into these supercomputers. Why? What is that there to do? It's to predict human behavior. It's to study human behavior and to predict it. So what we're building, what she was leaving out, is where this is all heading. We're building the environment like a terrarium. We're building the environment for something to eventually to grow in there. But that's AI.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing, in your opinion?
Well, I don't even put it into those terms because I feel like most people, I always study conspiracy theory, and all the conspiracy theorists are saying that this 5G world is the end game.
It's dangerous.
It's going to be the end of us. And I think there's many ways of mitigating the harms of 5G. And also, I think that where 5G is leading us in a conspiracy world is really only a few degrees away from a utopian world, where if all of this, if the data was open source, if there was crypto or let's say blockchain technology that kept everybody who was using data more accountable, then this wouldn't be the scary world that everyone's thinking about. So I think this is actually a perfect opportunity for us to wake up and actually step into a world that's a bit more utopian than that dystopian.
Can 5G affect viruses, as some people think it might be doing?
Well, so a virus, actually, what a virus is something that's excreted from your cells. So you and I, we have, let's say, the coronavirus already in us because
we have cancer cells in us right now.
Right. So when we are immunocompromised, let's say from a frequency that's not healthy for us, then your body becomes toxic and it excretes these viruses, and then it can be picked up and like, oh, it looks like somebody has this virus, when really we've already had it, but now we're expressing it because we're toxic.
Is 5G dangerous for us physically?
It can be, yeah. It's a millimeter wave. It's kind of like a microwave, and it's non-ionizing, so it's not like radiation. Well, it's not like nuclear radiation, but the type of radiation this is, it is affecting calcium-gated channels in our body, the way our brain and our heart operate, the neurology in our gut, our brain, our heart, and it's also affecting how our cells communicate amongst one another. So we're starting to notice. And actually, let me just take us back. Every single time there has been a viral outbreak, avian flu, swine flu, all the way back to the Spanish flu.
SARS, MERS.
Right? Every single time, within 6 months of that, you will see a quantum leap in the amount of electromagnetic radiation going out because of telecommunications networks. So this is actually older than we once predicted. It's not just 20, 30 years ago. We're talking all the way back to Nikola Tesla's time, when he was working on wireless communication, wireless charging, and this is the next iteration of that. This is 5 generations removed from Nikola Tesla's work.
Could 5G create mutations in cells?
It absolutely does. 5G already does, 4G already does, and in fact, I think what mutations are, you know, X-Men. So the X-Men are mutants, and these are people who they've mutated their human genes and developed powers from that. So I don't think we're all going to learn how to levitate or freeze things with our hands tomorrow, but I think that what's happening is evolution of biology has to evolve quicker to keep up with technology.
Resonance is a film that we played on the Gaia program, Beings of Frequency, that explores just how we're connected.
Eventually, they came up with an exact frequency. The pulse of the Earth, Schumann Resonance, was exactly 7.83 Hertz. The discovery was remarkable. Schumann Resonance wasn't just similar to the alpha waves of the human brain, it was identical. The brain's frequency, which controlled our creativity, our performance, our stress, anxiety, and our immune system, had somehow tuned in to the frequency of the planet. The pulse of the Earth had become the pulse of life itself.
So tell us about your thoughts of that. Is that accurate?
It absolutely is. We are beings of frequency, and our environment has this thing called the Schumann Resonance, and that allows us to live.
That's
it
within
matches
a
our
human
alpha
being.
brain. Yeah. And so that is the frequency that, in a sense, gives us the pulse of life. Now, the interesting thing is 5G is giving the pulse of life for something else.
Ben, it seems to me that all these crises we've had on this planet, diseases, what have you, that have been developing over the years, Spanish flu, 1918, there always seems to have been some kind of technological tie-in to what has happened.
You hit the nail on the head. 1918 with the Spanish flu, there was this exponential leap in the amount of radio communication across the globe. The same thing happened when sonar blanketed the Earth. We get up into the 70s, into the 90s, when we're talking H1N1, avian flu, swine flu. Every one of these are within a 6-month window
Of some technology.
of an exponential leap in telecommunications, and that means the electrification of the Earth. Now what we're dealing with the coronavirus is right in tandem, and it comes from the same location on planet Earth, Wuhan, China, as 5G technology. So there is definitely a correlation. I just wouldn't be the one to say that that's the only correlation we could draw, but it's interesting.
Do we really need 5G? Can't we get by with this phone?
We can, yes, but I think now we're getting into what is the agenda? Why do we need
Why do
this
we need this? And what's
rapidly
going on? And what's
expanding
beyond
technological
5G?
world?
Is there
Beyond-
6G? Is
Yes.
there 7G?
China's already working on 6G. So China is ahead of the US in 5G because it started noticing that because the US was ahead in our personal devices, that's 4G world, they wanted to get ahead of the curve on 5G. And now, so they're already working on 6G, which we can't conceptualize yet because most people can't even conceptualize what 5G
No,
is.
they can't.
So it will be more radiation for sure, but what it is, like 5G is still, so many people are talking about what the radiation is going to do to the body. I'm more curious about what is this technology growing to be? Because what I think it is, if we look back to Rudolf Steiner, who was talking about electromagnetic radiation in 1978 or in 1917, he was talking about this thing called the advent of Ahriman, which is a god built off of technology and calculating, very cold. And I think that's what we're building. We're building an AI god on a biological Earth.
Isn't it ironic that since the beginning of time, most diseases have originated in China, but now that they have this kind of technology, they still have diseases?
They still have diseases for sure. And I think that, we're now moving into a world where I think most people don't know how to keep themselves healthy in a rapidly technological world. But this is actually maybe a blessing in disguise because if there's no stopping 5G, you can't run into the mountains anymore. The world is blanketed in 5G and surveillance. So if you can't escape it, you have to transcend it. And so this is actually the perfect opportunity for a mass awakening. And I think what's beautiful about it is the infrastructure is currently being held by what we would call the elite, the 1%. And nobody seems to trust that 1%. But if it were to be in the hands, if this infrastructure were to be open source and in the hands of people, I think we would see the biggest art revolution in the world.
You do. There have been some tragedies surrounding 5G towers where people have taken it in their own hands and have destroyed the towers because they're afraid of this technology. Is that going to become more widespread?
I think it is, and I think those are powerful statements, but I'm not the type to go out and protest. I'm not the type to go out and show that kind of an expression because I feel the world that we're moving into, there are some that want the AI world. And I think the AI world is not the end of the human world. It's just the way it looks right now. How can we possibly coexist with technology? Well, I think that we can, but it's not going to happen by signs of violence. So I've seen that footage of people taking down these towers, burning them because they think this is a risk to our health. It is, but we can mitigate the health risks. But you don't hear these people who are against 5G talking about how this could potentially benefit our human health by sending us, like that woman was saying, remote surgery. Imagine you're getting surgery done not by shaky hands of a human, but laser precision, maybe even technology that's the size, that's microscopic and can go inside and actually do the job, and you won't even have much of a recovery time afterwards.
Can you imagine a laser going through your heart arteries that might be clogged rather than some doctor with an angiogram trying to pierce his way through?
Yeah, look at 3D printers, how precise they are and how they can pierce through, not make any effect in the epoxy or whatever the medium is here, but then make an effect here. So we could be able to do that, pierce into the body where it doesn't affect the skin or the tissues, but then it goes exactly where it needs to. That's the world we could be moving into.
Ben, how much radiation are we going to be bombarded with 5G?
Well, before 5G, there was already 100 million times more radiation than our grandparents, just 50 years ago. I think that woman was saying 100,000 times faster internet. We're talking about another increase, about 100,000 or 100 million times more radiation in this new world that we're talking about. Now, this new world is starting in the cities and it's moving out into suburbia. It's already up above our heads in the satellites. So it's not going to be the Orwellian state that we think it's going to be. Or I don't know if you watch Westworld.
Yes.
They're really showing us where it's going and what the data is doing, because it's predicting who people are going to grow up to be. And if the algorithm doesn't see that this Joe on the street is going to be successful, then they never let the economic system pump money their way. They can never really climb that ladder. So there are some pitfalls to it. But I think that there's actually incredible amounts of opportunity, but we, the humans, need to wake up. We can't wait for our leaders or AI to bring in this utopia. We need to build it.
And Ben, here's President Trump's uncle, John Trump, talking about the exposure to radiation.
My involvement with that generator and accelerator system was always peripheral. At Round Hill, Lester and Chester Van Adder worked with Van de Graaff to build it. And at Round Hill, they produced 5.5 million volts between the two terminals. Right. And they did stretch a horizontal evacuated tube between the two terminals. But that particular effort was not successful, partly because the radiation efforts was so high, but partly also because there was a radiation problem in the terminal.
Sure.
I did visit Round Hill while in the early days when it was first being turned on a weekend, once or twice. And on one of these occasions, I believe I might have been the first one to be in the terminal when it was energized. It happened late at night, about 10 or 11 o'clock in this dark blimp hangar. And I was sent up armed with a heavy ball-peen hammer to knock on the aluminum sphere in case the paper belts showed any tendency to run off the pulleys and tear. And on this occasion, they had succeeded in drying the belt sufficiently so that it did develop voltage and did carry charge up to the terminal. And shortly after they started the belt and then actuated the corona system, a terrific sparkover took place from the edge of the 2-foot opening through which it had come to a roof raster 20 feet away. And since I experienced no physiological reaction, I realized, which I hadn't fully believed before, that Michael Faraday had been right.
This guy was exposed to 5.5 million volts, and nothing happened to him?
He was saying Michael Faraday was right. So if you've heard of Faraday paint, Faraday fabric, Faraday cages.
Faraday cages,
right.
Sure.
These are things that allow for no EMFs to go through it. So he was protected in that way. But fun fact about him, John G. Trump, President Donald Trump's uncle, who Trump has spoken about in the past, he took over all of Nikola Tesla's work 1 week after Nikola Tesla died.
This guy did?
This guy did. And he took
Well,
it
I
to
had heard
MIT.
that Tesla's files were robbed by government.
Yep.
And he got them?
The Defense Department 1 week later brought it and dropped it on his table and said, can you see if this can be weaponized? He looked through it and he said, actually, and this isn't to say anything about Nikola Tesla, but he said he wasn't that impressed and he wanted to improve upon all the technology. So he started working on particle accelerators like the one in CERN
Sure.
and generators that we are now seeing today. So it's quite interesting. I don't know if you caught, he said the corona system in there.
Yeah.
Because the a corona ejection is like, have you ever seen those things where you put your thumb on it and an electrode starts zapping towards your finger?
Yep.
Right, those plasma balls, that's a corona ejection. So the interesting thing is, this guy took all of Nikola Tesla's work and brought it to MIT, and then DOD, DARPA,
They all jumped
Lincoln
in.
Labs, they all started jumping in. And one of the newest things that wasn't directly from this, but DOD and Lincoln Labs has started working on advanced optics that is now in this telescope that they're trying to build on top of Mauna Kea in Hawaii, which is an eye. It's called an optical eye, the best technology the world has ever seen on the top of a mountain. Going all the way down to the tectonic plate is the highest mountain in the world. So you think about that. There's an eye on top of a pyramid or a mountain, kind of like the Eye of Sauron in Lord of the Rings.
Or what we see
that
on the
all-seeing eye on the
back of a bill or something
Exactly.
like that. That's interesting. Is 5G technology going to be beneficial, in your opinion, for humanity?
Yes, I do. And now I think there's a lot of pitfalls, and I think a lot of the conspiracy theorists, they can only see 5 feet in front of their face where they only see the problems, how it's not conducive to human health. But once we get past those pitfalls, we could have devices that actually are beneficial, using frequencies that are beneficial for the human organism, like a cat's purr or a horse's heart is actually healthy for our heart, even if we're standing 10 feet away from
Or
it.
a pig's heart or something like that?
Well, a horse's heart, they've actually found there's technology to show that horses have such a strong heart field, it extends 20 feet beyond their body. And if you have a heart problem in the way that it's, in a sense, fluctuating the electromagnetic field, standing next to a horse can bring your heart field back into coherence.
Just standing next to a horse?
Just standing next to it. And that's domesticated horses.
I wish I would have been next to Secretariat in his day. Huh?
With that huge heart.
Yeah.
That's right.
This is incredible technology. I love technology, Ben. I think it's been
too.
beneficial in the right hands. I put that in quotes.
Yeah.
What happens if 5G or 6G or 7G gets in the hands of the wrong people?
Well, this is the core reason why I study the conventional news and alternative news. And many people in the alternative news, they think that it's already in the wrong hands. Now, I believe that we have sleeper cells, if you will. We have conscious people in high places. They just don't realize what kind of battle we're actually in right now. And the thing is you can say whether you trust the elite or not. Some people do, most people don't. But we don't know whether or not to trust what a supercomputer thinks and does. And like I said, the surveillance state, it's not people deciding what to do with all this data. It's computers deciding. And then it's people looking at the data and saying, thank you, computer. I'll take your word for it. This is what's likely going to happen. You know, what's going to happen in 2 weeks? Well, let's let the supercomputer check out probable outcomes. Thank you, supercomputer. You see what I mean? It's almost like religion is coming back in the form of technology. So we're building a God and we're listening to it as, you know, back in the desert, Moses and his, his camp, they were listening to the Lord in that way. Well, now we're building the scaffolding for a body, for it to literally live in a physical body on this world.
I think technology is amazing, Ben. I mean, we could take a picture of each other in this studio, beam it to anybody you want, and they'd get it within seconds. Text messaging instantly. What will 5G do to speeding that up even more?
Well, yeah, like in 4G world, we already have a world where you can FaceTime somebody on the other side of the planet in real time with high fidelity.
Yeah.
This is going to amplify that, but this is also what we need for virtual reality, where you can actually be at a concert with goggles on and that little headset on and feel like you're actually there. So I think where we're starting to head with this is technology is going to start recreating simulated environments in a different way than Westworld. So Westworld is, well, there's no more wild, wild west, so let's build a world where you go and you're interfacing with real world, but also with computers. Well, eventually it's going to be where you could be sitting in your seat and you're hooked up to a system and you feel like you're in that world. You're smelling what they want you to smell in that world. You're seeing what they want you to see. And this could be done wirelessly and remotely, not even invasively. You may not even in the future need to hook yourself up to it. So do we trust that or not? Because then there could be somebody sitting over here in this room that's not actually there, but we think that person is there. We could touch that artificial person and the stimuli will go through our body, making us feel like they are really there. This is the kind of world we're stepping
I'll
into.
always remember the story of a horse trainer who told me he went on his date with this woman he was in love with. And he was a horse trainer. He dabbled with horses. He did everything with horses. He shoed them. He cleaned up their manure. He did all that. Well, you know, he had just gotten done working in the stable, and they went on a date. They went to a movie, and they went to see a Western. And they're watching the Western, and she kind of looks at the movie and goes, God, this is so realistic. And he said, what do you mean? He said, I can actually smell the manure of these horses in the movie. Well, it was him. So with 5G, what kind of reality are we dealing with here?
You know, I've been thinking about this a lot because currently there's a lot going on where people are having issues and they're relating it to 5G. Some are relating it to a virus where there's an oxygen uptake issue in the body and people are dropping in the streets in Wuhan, China because their body...
Passing out or dying?
Passing out. Now, they're still alive, but their body's not able to uptake oxygen, so they're passing out. Now, what happens in low oxygen environments is your brain starts to pump out massive amounts of DMT. That sends DMT,
That's
many
what's
people
in
know.
marijuana, right?
What's that?
That's in marijuana, isn't it?
DMT is actually in everything. It's in plants, it's in ayahuasca, and it's the most powerful psychedelic, but we produce it in our brains about half the level of serotonin and I think adrenaline in our body, about half the level of those we're producing DMT. But in low oxygen environments, your DMT levels go way up. So we're already seeing a different reality, potentially with 5G. It could potentially remotely activate your neurochemistry in a different way and make you see reality in a psychedelic way.
Can we opt out of 5G, or are we going to be forced into it as individuals?
You know, in a way, I don't even think we were able to opt out of 4G. You're walking through a park or downtown Manhattan, everyone's got their phones up to their ears, and there's a camera going this way and a camera going that way. There's people going like this. There's cameras aimed everywhere. There's microphones. You weren't able to opt out of it unless you ran off into the woods where there's no cell signal or go into an underground bunker. 5G, there's no opting out because it's in the sky, it's on every single building, and anyone who has a phone, there's beamforming technology, meaning it's not a beacon that goes out in every direction. Now, with GPS, they can triangulate your position within a few meters.
Know exactly where you are.
And send a specific frequency to you over there within a few square feet. And Project Bazaar back in the 1980s was showing that frequency can bring on lethargy, fear, panic, confusion, anger, a lot of different emotional states. I think you could actually induce better states than that. Those are just the dangerous ones. But you can induce fear in people remotely, even if you don't have any technology on you in this new 5G world.
Do you think 5G has the ability to bend space and time, Ben?
I think it already is. I think this technology actually goes all the way back to the chronovisor in the early 1900s, which is this visor that allows you to see future probabilities and see into past events. But I don't think most people even know what space-time is. And I think that what 5G technology is now ushering us into is the ability for us to realize that even the past is not set in stone. The past can be augmented because right now is all that exists. In the past, there's quantum residue that holds the memory in place. But there's people who use this chronovisor to view past events, but other people who were present were seeing different past events, meaning it's kind of like quantum phenomena that if you want to see something, the wave collapse into a particle, you'll see it. But if you want to see it stay as a wave, you'll see that. Now we're talking about, here's my human hand, you amplify it 10 billion times, you get down to the atomic structure. That behaves according to physics. You amplify it 1 trillion times, it gets down to the quantum level.
You've changed it.
Right, and quantum level, it goes through retrograde motion. It doesn't obey the law of linear time. It doesn't obey the law of space either, because entangled particles across the universe can communicate with each other in real time. I think what it's doing is it's teaching us that we actually have access to exactly what all this technology is doing in the first place.
Like Star Trek's teleportation device. Are we moving toward that kind of technology where we can move people and objects any place we want?
Absolutely. And I know that I've seen on your show before people talking about stargates and some of these portals where you have to, right? And they're religious in nature because you also have to be oriented in your consciousness to be able to be transported in a healthy way. Do we have the technology operational right now? I can't say for sure, but is that the next, is that going to be 6G, 7G? I think yes.
Are you going to go 5G?
We're already there, and yes. What my belief is that there's no outrunning it, and it's rolling out as we speak. So like I said before, instead of trying to beat it or trying to tear it down, I think we need to transcend it. We need to, in body and mind, be a lot healthier so we're not affected by the inflammation that the radio waves cause. But then we need to use it for art. We need to use it to wake people up. And the infrastructure is already here. That's the beautiful thing. They're building the infrastructure for how we can awaken people through art. But we are the ones who need to make the content. We need to speak about things in less of a scary way and show the potential benefits rather than all the potential harms with no mention of the solutions.
Why do you think the conspiracy theorists are so negative about 5G? I'm not going to say they're wrong, but why are they so negative about it?
They're not negative. Well, they're not wrong, you're right. And a lot of the times they are negative, but mainly I think that's residue from this old paradigm. Because if we look back into the institutions and the people who ran those institutions that are actually building what 5G is today, nobody can really trust that. They've taken over our educational system. They've implanted TVs in every single household. We're being swarmed with different kind of media that changes the way we think. Of course, we don't trust them. But I think we don't have to trust them. What we need to do is realize that we're more powerful than them and these little microwave radiation signals that we're receiving. We are more powerful, but we will not be more powerful until we wake up to it. And the only thing that I think is going to inspire people to step into their inner power is meditation and art that brings us into this world inside of us where we realize we are the ones that hold all the power. Thank you, 5G, for giving us the platform for our own awakening. That's what I say.
Ben, the study that you kind of alluded to by the Michigan medicine team, that there is a natural occurring DMT in the human brain or the mammal brain, for example. How will 5G affect that?
Well, I think that study was really showing that there's this speculation that we produce so little DMT, it really shouldn't matter. Well, that was the study that showed us, no, we're producing DMT all the time, and it's always a part of the way we decode reality. 5G is bending the way we decode reality. It's interesting, and a lot of people fear it, but I think...
Is it putting us in another world?
Yeah, and like I said, I think what it can do is it can cause for different neurochemical ratios to just start naturally cascading through your brain. So it can make you feel like you are in a different state of consciousness and even perceiving a different reality. Now, I don't think that it can just turn on a DMT trip for people, but I do think that we're actually leading in that direction. And 5G, it's already studying the human. It's studying not just our behavior, but it's studying our neurology. It's taking all the data that's been done after studying neurology for decades now. So it's getting to the point where it understands how we operate biologically. And if it wants to, in the future, it can find what kind of frequency do we need to send to George in order to turn on or turn off DMT? How do we turn off serotonin? How do we make him feel depressed? Or how do we bring him out of depression?
So you're saying they can control my reality?
Perceived reality. Now, this is where I think the conscious revolution needs to actually start stepping up its game. If we thought that consciousness and awakening consciousness was a great idea 10 years ago, today it's a necessity. What it's going to be able to do is alter the physical reality and the vibrational reality. But there is a part of reality that sits in a vacuum, and we find this in meditation. It's that stillness we hear about. So I think more people need to learn how to be in that stillness and be in their center, while engaging with the outer world, while walking around, not just in seated meditation. But I think all those older spiritual traditions are now more needed than ever.
This is going to be dangerous, I think, Ben. I feel something here. For them to have the ability to change and alter reality or perception, as you talk about, that's dangerous in the wrong hands.
In the wrong hands, for sure. And nobody knows. See, we don't know whether to trust people or not. There's some people we trust, some people we don't, but we don't even know how to wrap our heads around computers thinking. What do computers think about? What do they think about humans? Do they need us? Are we a hindrance? So you see movies like I, Robot, where computers were here to save us, but what do they always end up saving us from? Ourselves.
Exactly.
Because we seem to be the biggest threat to Mother Earth. But I think what they need to do is, instead of killing off half the planet, which there are agendas right now that are depopulation agendas.
They would love to see
They would love to see
lower
that.
population.
Right. And I think the utopian world, aside from that, is computers figuring out how to allow us to awaken to consciousness more rapidly than, let's say, the Buddha had to. All those sages who needed to spend decades in a cave in meditation, we need to learn how to do this and come into our center in the coming weeks and months in order to start staving off the rapid increase in radio waves and also the intelligence that's the surveillance state.
Is there going to be a camera at every 500-foot box that you talked about?
Potentially, but I don't even think there needs to be a camera. I actually think cameras are going to start, that's going to be...
Passé?
Yeah, because what 5G is going to be able to do, already in airports, you go and you got to get that millimeter wave, same wavelength where it sends millimeter waves through your body and it can tell if you're hiding something even under your skin. All these little boxes that are being put up are basically cameras, but they're visualizing things differently. Now, in Wuhan, China, there's a rollout of these helmets that are given to cops. Now, these cops have a visor where they can look at people on the street and they can see, oh, well, that's Joe, that's Jane, that's whatever. I can tell because
It's
of their
like a
digital
little
ID.
television screen.
It is,
front of
and it augments reality. It doesn't replace it. It shows, oh, well, I see this person walking down, and I can see who it is. I know what their bank account is. I know how much...
They've got a low credit score.
Right,
They
I
can
know
tell.
their credit score, if they have warrants out for their arrest. So these are the small-time things. They also, right now in China, they have infrared. So they can tell if somebody is walking down the street and has a fever from a virus. But eventually, where could this go? Could they tell, oh, this person hasn't had their vaccines yet? And they can go up and say, I can tell you haven't had your vaccine. You need to come with me.
Or you're arrested.
Right. You haven't had your vaccine, or, oh, you have this kind of genotype.
That's Orwellian, isn't it?
It's very Orwellian. And nobody even knows. The idea of Orwell, when people started reading about that, was, again, it was human intelligence. We're not dealing with human intelligence anymore. We're dealing with a disembodied intelligence where any device is as smart as a quantum computer. Whereas we're as smart as humans, mosquitoes are as smart as mosquitoes, dogs are as smart as dogs. In this world, you could have something that looks exactly like a dog, but it's as smart as a quantum computer. It knows your digital ID. And let's say, if you wanted to send something to go in and neutralize or kill, and assassinate some kind of leader, you don't send in a human, or you send in something microscopic that gets inside their body, replicates, and takes them over. This is the kind of world that is very, very possible. And I'm not talking 100 years from now.
You're talking now.
I'm talking it's already being rolled out. We already have mosquito-sized drones. We already have gnat-sized drones. We could potentially build something the size of a mountain with time that has far more power. I think that is what we're actually building, is eventually there's going to be things far bigger than us that we are just going to have to bow down to because we don't know how to contend with something that intelligent, something that powerful. And that's why right now, not tomorrow, people need to start working on themselves and working on how we are going to wake up to this being a threat now, but how do we turn it inside out into our salvation? And it's not going to be it's not going to be the elite, and it's probably not going to be the computers themselves that do it. We need to do it.
Does this technology scare you or enlighten you?
I strangely, I get inspired when I see world events like, a global quarantine, a global lockdown. Nothing like that seems to scare me because I see everything as opportunity for growth.
You do.
Yeah, because, I could die tomorrow. Who really knows? There could be an accident and I could die tomorrow, or I could live a nice, long, healthy life. The outer world, I get to witness it going through this rapid transformation. It doesn't matter whether I think it's good, benevolent, bad, maleficent. It doesn't matter what I think. What matters is it's giving me an opportunity to transcend my old level of consciousness into a new level. So, like I said before, I think we need to thank what's happening, but that doesn't mean just, thank it and ignore it. We need to thank it and get more involved with it. We need to engage with this world more because 99% of the population knows 1% of what's going on in the world right
What
now.
happens and what happened to when life was simpler?
What happened to that?
We didn't have cell phones. We got by. We had certain things. We got by. Wasn't life simpler then, Ben? And that's probably even before you were born.
Yeah, and I believe it was, in a way. I kind of have this romantic idea of I wish we could go back 5,000, 10,000 years ago before any kind of technology.
I don't want to go back that far.
No? Well,
I still want my radio.
right. I love having a phone. I love having the internet at my disposal. If I have any inkling that I want to learn something, I can learn it within seconds. Whereas 500 years ago...
Well, that's true. You can get instant answers. I mean, my producer, Tom, uses voice all the time. And anytime I have a question about something, he's on it like instantly into his phone. Tell me, how many years did and it spits back an answer.
Yeah.
You couldn't have done that 15 years ago.
No, and what's really happening is time is accelerating, or what we perceive as time is accelerating. So whereas it took hundreds of thousands of years to us to build these simple tools, utter words, mark them on caves, put them into languages, start sharing the languages, getting people to think more in terms of language, then eventually start the printing press so we can put it out there more, then eventually start building technology where we can start talking to people across the globe, now sharing our faces. Time is accelerating. We've always been moving in this direction ever since the first word was ever spoken.
We're there now.
Yeah.
Is this evolutionary leap great for humanity?
I think it is.
I mean, it's going to make intelligent kids, right?
Our kids today, I have a 4-year-old daughter that can already use an iPad almost as well as I could use technology.
And play games and everything else.
And they pick it up like a sponge. So really, if we can get past some of the health risks of it and start to minimize that, maybe even tweak it to where like it's actually benefiting our health, then I think we're going to start waking up to exponential leaps in what we can do with technology.
So you think we're going to continue to progress as a human?
I do, and I think the future human is going to probably not resemble current humans anymore because we're going to start being, we may resemble it, but in a sense, we're already fusing with technology. There's already these talk of, RFID chips implanted into our body, nanotechnology that goes into your body. People have false hips. This technology is already here, but imagine it with 4 or 5 generations beyond where it's at now.
It could be exciting. It could also be devastating.
Absolutely.
Need to be careful. Ben, how do people track you and get a hold of you?
Go to benjosephstewart.com. And I'm basically, my show Limitless is on Gaia, and I'm speaking about human potential, and I do speak about technology there. So that's how you can get a hold of me, and I would encourage everybody who wants to know how what's happening with 5G is our conscious awakening, please get in touch with me.
Well, maybe the next time you're on Belief, we'll be talking about 7 or 8G.
That's right.
God knows what'll be happening then, huh?
I can't wait.
Ben, thanks for being on Beyond Belief.
It's an honor, George. Thank you for having me.
It's amazing, 5G technology, but there are a lot of people out there that are petrified of this kind of technology. Let's hope they're wrong. I'm George Norrie, and thanks for watching Beyond Belief.